We stay on time. So welcome, my name is Megan Crum, and I'm a professional development specialist with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. And so today we're going to talk about the countdown to April 30th, how you as a student loan borrower can benefit from one of the student loan debt relief programs that's currently happening, and it is going to end on April 30th. So we just have a few housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording today's session, and it will be shared on our YouTube page that we have now, but as well as our website for you to access later. So if at any point you're having trouble hearing me today, or if you have a colleague joining or a friend, know that you can have WebEx call you at the number that you prefer. If for some reason, my laptop likes to not work sometimes. So if you have the same thing, you can have WebEx call you. We are using the Q&A feature, which is located at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So if you're on a laptop like I am, the Q&A is located at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And then just for today's webinar, we're not going to be offering continuing education or professional development hours either. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about what are income-driven repayment plans and how you can get on one if you're not currently. We're going to talk about what is this countdown to April 30th, and that is known as the IDR payment account adjustment overview. So I'm going to give a brief overview of how it's going to work and how you can benefit as a borrower. I'm going to talk about how the adjustment impacts public service loan forgiveness, or PSLF. So if you are pursuing PSLF like I am, and how it would affect you. And then we're going to go through some question and answers that the Department of Education have developed, and just where this, if you have these similar questions, and what that looks like for you. And then some resources ISAC has, but as well as resources from the Department of Education to help you through this process. So we're first going to touch base on what are income-driven repayment plans. So know that these are a set of repayment plans available to federal student loan borrowers. So for myself, I'm a federal student loan borrower. I am currently on an income-driven repayment plan, but an income-driven repayment plan is an umbrella term. So there are 4 different types of income-driven repayment plans that you can be on. One is pay-as-you-earn, or pay. The newest one that you may be aware of is Saving on a Valuable Education Plan, or SAVE. So this was renamed from the revised pay-as-you-earn plan, or REPAY. So it's now known as the SAVE plan. It's probably the biggest one the administration has really pushed this past year or so, and that many people are aware of. There's also income-based repayment, and then income contingent repayment. They all have their own acronyms. If you say the acronym, me and the staff that are on today for the panelists, we know what you're talking about, but they're often referred to their acronyms as well, just in general. So the SAVE plan, right, that's how the administration refers to it, rather than saying the big long name. But with an IDR plan, what happens is that it is based on a couple different things. It's based on your income and your spouse's if you're married, and then your family size. So I'm a single person, I don't have children, I'm one person. So in that case, they base my payment for my federal student loans based off my current income and my household size. And my household size is size of 1. But for, say, you joining us on the call, maybe you are married and you have 4 children, and your income is say higher or lower, whatever it may be. But the income-driven repayment plan, the formula looks at how much you and your spouse make, as well as what is your household size and those things. But the key piece is that if you have been on an income-driven repayment plan long enough, either 20 or 25 years of repayment, the end goal is to have, if there is any remaining balance, to be forgiven. That is the goal of being on an IDR, is one, to hopefully have a lower payment, but also that there is something forgiven at the end of your term of repayment. So whether that be 20 or 25 years. Now, you do have to apply for these plans. You're not automatically granted them. You do have to apply to enroll in one. So if you remember all the way back when you finished your schooling, that you potentially had to do what was called exit counseling, or had to do something to say, yes, I want to enroll. And maybe you've been on a couple different repayment plans before, or you're like, I think I'm on the standard one. The IDRs are one set of repayment plans. There are several others that work for borrowers, but many student loan borrowers are on the income-driven repayment plans. But again, you do have to apply for them. So one thing that we're really big here at the Illinois Student Assistance Commission is making sure that you understand your options. And so me, for myself, I'm a big proponent of making an informed decision. And so we want you as a federal student loan borrower to be informed as well. And so before you say just, oh, great, income-driven payment plans sound like they fit for me, you want to weigh your options, right? Because there are different things when looking at IDR. So really it's the length of time. The length of time you're in repayment, so whether they're for your undergraduate loans or graduate loans, and then your discretionary income. And so I know it's kind of small on your screen, but on your screen, this is a graph from the Department of Education that says based on which plan you're on. So if you're on the pay plan, they look at 10% of your discretionary income, and then the repayment period's 20 years. Okay. And so, but if you look at the SAVE plan, it's 20 years for undergraduate loans, and then 25 years you need to be paying if you have graduate or professional loans. But under, say, the IBR plan, it's 25 years. So we're talking over 200 payments, those kinds of things that you had to have made. In addition to that, maybe you have other things to consider, such as you have multiple loans with multiple servicers. So that may be something that you want to consolidate into having one lender with one servicer. What are those repayment terms? Maybe an income-driven repayment plan for you right now works, but maybe in the future something, that you're gonna get married and have a promotion, whatever it may be. But for you right now it works, but it may not work in the future, and that's okay. Or maybe it hasn't worked for you right now, but it could. So know that making just that informed decision about what plan is you're most eligible for, but also how long are you going to be paying your loans back, depending on the type of loan that you have, whether again it's for your undergraduate degree or for it's your graduate degree. So if you are currently enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan, and once you become enrolled in an IDR plan, you have to keep doing this every year. You have to update your income and your family size. Now, during the pandemic, this was paused for a lot of borrowers because a lot of people were laid off. And the world was ending there in a minute. But in that case, the department said, we're going to pause this for right now because a lot of people are suffering. And so this is something that normally you would have to do every year, and they've started rolling back around to this, is what they call recertification. And so you need to recertify your income as well as your family size. So say you had been on an income-driven payment plan prior to the pandemic, but then now, since we're out of the payment pause, you're like, okay, I'm back on an income-driven plan, but it's been several years now. My family size has changed. I've had a lot of things happen to me. You absolutely can recertify your information, your family size and your income with your loan servicer to say, hey, I would like an updated payment count. But also an updated payment, because your payment could be changed now if you have a child or multiple children, or you got married, right? Or you potentially got divorced as well. So you want to let your loan servicer know if you've had a change in any sort of circumstance like that. Now, how you do this is to update your income is you can either manually enter your taxes, or you can provide consent to have your tax information transferred from the IRS to the Department of Education and for your loan servicer to calculate your payment. We would recommend that you consent to have it pulled directly from the IRS. If you do manually enter your taxes, you do have to provide that supporting documentation from the IRS showing that you do that is how much you filed for taxes for that year. In addition, though, as I mentioned, if you've had any sort of situation change, you can let your loan servicer know that you want to recertify now. Like I mentioned, you only have to do this once a year. But if, say, you recertified, say, back in November, hypothetically, and now your situation has changed and you're not due to recertify again until November of this year, you can recertify before that because your situation has changed. They may ask for additional documentation, in those things. Maybe you're asking for a situation change because you've had, health bills or something like that. You've had a change, a significant change. And so they may ask for that documentation. Every loan servicer is different, but there's no harm in asking to see if what they can do to help you so that you can get recertified and potentially have a lower payment. So there is something known as consolidation, and I mentioned this as you make an informed decision. So some borrowers, when they leave their undergrad as well as graduate school, they have multiple loans with multiple servicers. And that may very well be the case for you, or you have loans from back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then you went to school later, and now you have, say, two different types of loans. You have, say, a FFEL loan, which is a federal family education loan, and then now you have direct loans, or you have a FFEL consolidated loan or a direct consolidated loan. Those are two very different things. The FFEL program and the direct loan program are two different loan programs. So maybe the case is that you want to consolidate all of your loans that you have into just one lender with one payment, right? And one interest rate. So that's what will happen if you choose to consolidate. Now, I have consolidated for my loans. I did that because of PSLF, so that my loans could be all on the same payment count, towards the tracking of the 120 payments or the 10 years I need to make payments for. That may be something you're interested in terms of consolidation because you want them all on the same payment count, knowing that maybe your FFEL loans are a lot older and you're higher in payments than you would say be for your direct loans if that's your case. Once you consolidate your loans, you can't undo it. It's a permanent change to your loans because your original loans are considered paid off and a new loan is established for you. So you can't undo it. But say you have a FFEL consolidated loan, or you just have FFEL loans, or some of those older federal student loans, you can consolidate them into a direct loan. Okay, you are allowed to do that because it's two different types of loan programs. You do have to apply for consolidation. This is not something automatically granted to you as a borrower. You do have to apply for it. Now, you do get about a 10-day grace period. Say you applied and you're like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I decided I don't want to do it. During those 10 days, you have the ability to cancel the consolidation. But after that 10-day mark, that's it. The consolidation will go through and you won't be able to undo it. Or to cancel it in a sense. So consolidation does take about 30 days. And once you apply, your loan servicer talks to the Department of Education and works with them to get your loans consolidated. Okay, all that stuff happens on the back end. But know that you won't have, the only thing you have to do is apply for consolidation, and then potentially, if you have a new loan servicer, have a new account created. So that's just general information for you as a federal student loan borrower. So what does all this mean for you if you are hoping to benefit from what's being known as the income driven repayment count adjustment? And so all the way back in 2022, the Department of Education announced that they were going to take steps to really help bring borrowers who had older federal student loans. So we're talking borrowers who went to school in the late 90s, early 2000s, and their loans that they have are part of an older federal student loan program, to bring them up to have higher payment counts, to say, okay, you have been paying long enough on your loans, and what they are trying to do is get your loans forgiven, or to get you done paying on them because you've been making payments for over 20 years potentially. And so this really was spurred because NPR had done an article that they had done some digging into the student loan system, and they found borrowers who have been on an income driven repayment plan for the 20 or 25 years length of time, they met the requirements to have their loans forgiven, but their loans weren't. And so NPR really kind of spurred the department to say, okay, what are you going to do about this? Because there's these borrowers who've been paying for their loans a lot longer than, say, 20 or 25 years, the limit that would require them for forgiveness. And so what the department has done now is said, okay, we're going to look at borrowers who have these older federal student loans and borrowers who have current loans. So I have direct loans with the Department of Education. Now they're from 2012 and forward. But with those loans, when a lot of this is going to focus for you as borrowers who were in school in the early 2000s, but maybe in school and into the later 2000s and the early 2010s. This a payment account adjustment is going to hopefully bring up your payment count, meaning the department is going to look at all of the payments that you've made and see if they were previously ineligible to count towards IDR forgiveness, to now have them count towards forgiveness so you can get your loan, so your loans can be considered done and paid in full and have the remaining balance forgiven. So this has been happening for quite a while now. So, and the department just earlier this year announced that they are at the tail end of this work of updating borrowers' accounts who have met the length of time that they needed to have been paying for their loans. And now they've been working through borrowers who have been a part of PSLF, but also borrowers like myself who have direct loans and qualify for this because of the time frame that we're in. And so they're hoping to be done with this work by the summer, by middle of the summer. But again, it could take a little bit longer for some of you, just based on the number of loans you have and how long you've had them. So the key piece here is that borrowers are eligible for this adjustment, whether you were enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan or not. So if you're thinking of like, okay, I've had loans for quite a while, I graduated in 04, I have I think I have FFEL loans, or I have some sort of federal student loan. And I've been paying on them for quite a while, but I don't think I've ever been on an income-driven repayment plan. That's okay. This account adjustment is for a lot of people, actually. It's for people to help you bring up your payment count, to say, okay, you've been paying on your loans long enough. The department wants you to have your loans forgiven. So this is really for those people that either were or are currently on an income-driven repayment plan. Maybe you're like, okay, but I wasn't previously, but I wish those payments had counted towards forgiveness. If you are pursuing public service loan forgiveness currently right now, so like I'm one of the folks on the team that I'm on that is currently pursuing it. And then even if you were not on an IDR plan at any point during the repayment of your loans, but have direct loans or the FFEL loans, the federal family educational loans, this is for you as well. So again, those FFEL loans being the older federal student loans. What's going to happen is that the department started with borrowers, because the department has your loan history, okay? So they started with borrowers who have loans that have accumulated 20 or 25 years worth of payments, and they started with them first to receive forgiveness. And so this is where they're at, of like coming down to the kind of the tail end of this, of they've gone through those borrowers who have spent 20, 25 years, and now they're in this point of like, okay, who's remaining that they need to have their payment accounts adjusted to hopefully bring them closer to forgiveness, if not receive forgiveness. So this is what's going, as I mentioned, kind of work through this. Department's going to review all federal student loans, okay? You have a direct loan like I do, or you have a FFEL loan that's held by the department. Now I worked with a borrower last week that his loans are commercially held. What would need to happen is that the department's not going to review that FFEL loan automatically, because they're a commercially held FFEL loan. It's the FFEL program that's held by the department that they'll review automatically. Okay, so there's the key difference for that. But I'm going to talk about, for those of you who have commercial FFEL loans, what you'll need to do to have your account adjusted to be reviewed. So the department, with those borrowers, either you have a direct loan or you have a FFEL loan held by the department. The department's going to review them automatically. And so that's where this timelines come in, is of those older federal student loan borrowers to get them done with their payments to receive forgiveness. And then the department has moved on to that second point of working with borrowers who qualify for PSLF. Because if they've been making payments for 20 years and they've worked in public service for 10 of them, they qualify for public service loan forgiveness at some point. And so they wouldn't have needed the 20 years, right, to have made the payments. They wouldn't have needed that length of time. And so then from there, now the department's at that tail end, right, of anyone after that after PSLF, pursuing PSLF, maybe you just have been on an income driven repayment plan, from the beginning. But you haven't been paying for 20 years like I have. I haven't been paying 20 years, okay? But I've been on an income driven repayment plan since the payment pause got stopped. And so you're like, okay, I was on an IDR before the payment pause, but I'm not at my 20 years yet. They're going to start reviewing your accounts now. So what loans are eligible to have their account adjusted? So any direct loans that are subsidized or unsubsidized, okay? Any direct plus loans, so these would be loans taken out during graduate school or for professional school. A direct consolidated loan, so I have a direct consolidated loan now. I used to have subsidized and unsubsidized loans, but I have a consolidated loan now. And then it would be parent plus loans. So this is one thing that is different than the previous program that department was working through. So parent plus loans were not eligible during what was known as the PSLF limited waiver, but they are now under this account adjustment. So if you are a parent and you have a parent plus loan, you will qualify for this, okay? Though your parent plus loan will qualify under this account adjustment, okay? So, and the other would be the FEL loans owned by the department, okay? Now, for those of you who are like, Megan, I don't have any of those loans that you listed up there. I have commercially held loans. I have commercial FEL loans, or I have a Perkins loan, or you have a health education assistance loan. Those loans, you have to consolidate them by April 30th. This is where that April 30th deadline comes in, okay? You have to consolidate them no matter what, because the department is trying to get these older federal student loans to wind down that portfolio, because the portfolio just holds direct loans now. Everyone who take out federal student loans has a direct loan. So the department is trying to really get these FEL or these other types of older federal student loans, their portfolio down. And so if you have a commercially held loan, whether it be FEL, Perkins, or HEAL, you have to consolidate them in order to take advantage of this adjustment, okay? So that's super important. If you're like, I have no idea if I have a commercially FEL loan. On studentaid.gov, which is the Department of Education's website, you would create an account and it will load your loan history. You also could look at your servicer's website, okay, and they will tell you as well if you have commercially FEL loans. In that case, whether you go on each site, whether it's the servicer site or the department's, you will then see, it will tell you if they're commercially held or not. But again, you have to consolidate them by April 30th. So you have a little over a month. But if you're like, again, I'm not sure, go check that out. And then, okay, this is what you need to do. But you have to consolidate them. So what does this mean? How does this work for that it was anyone, even if you were this adjustment work, even if you've never been on an income driven repayment plan? It is this first bullet point. It is the department is, as they're reviewing your account, they're going to look at any month that you spent in repayment, okay? Regardless if the payment was made, life happens, right? Maybe you missed a payment on, accidentally, or you just couldn't afford your payment. It happens. The loan type that you have, again, for the direct loan kind of thing, or if it's the FEL loan held by the department, and then the repayment plan. Regardless of what of those three things, the department's going to look at your account and count those payments, okay? Regardless of the payment made, if a payment was made, the loan type that you have, and the repayment plan. So if you've been on a standard repayment plan the entire time you've been paying your loans, the department is going to say, okay, based on the information that we had from you, you could have potentially gone on an income driven and then therefore had your loans forgiven at some point. So at this point, hopefully any of those months spent in repayment will bring your payment count higher. That's the goal, right? But then additionally, maybe you were a borrower that you spent some time in forbearance or deferment due to economic hardship, or you had, say, a military deferment because you went active duty, whatever it may be. The department is also going to look at that and say, okay, what can we have payments count towards? And so if you spent 12 or more months in consecutive forbearance or 36 or more months of cumulative forbearance, they're going to count those payments towards the adjustment, okay? If you spent any month in economic hardship, so if you called your loan servicer and say, hey, I need to have, I'm experiencing, a lot of health issues and I need to defer my loan payments due to economic hardship, that payment, those pause payments will count as well. The military deferment, so if you know someone that was in the military and whatnot, then share this with them that this can count for them. If you spent any time in deferment except for in-school deferment, that's the key piece there, is that in-school deferment does not count for this, but it's prior to 2013. So again, loan borrowers who have, graduated, say, early 2000s and took out loans then, or going into the 2010s, those payments would call for you, that those payments are going to be counted now towards your overall goal, okay, of the say the 20 years. And then any time in repayment, whether it be deferment or forbearance, on earlier loans before consolidation of those loans into a consolidated loan. So what does that mean? So as I mentioned, I have a consolidated loan. I consolidated last year, but maybe you were a person that, way back when, you got out of school and you had a lot of loans with multiple servicers, and you had a FFEL loan, and you consolidated into a FFEL consolidated loan, okay? And then say, a little while later, you went back to school, you got a direct loan. And then you said, you know what? I want to bring it all together. So you consolidated your FFEL consolidated loan into a direct loan, okay? So now you have all direct loans, you have a direct consolidated loan. What's going to happen is that the department, because they have your loan history and your loan repayment history, they're going to look at all of those payments that you've made after you consolidated your final consolidation to direct consolidation, but then those payments that you made on your very first loans, your FFEL loans, and then the payments you made for FFEL consolidated loans, and then the payments that you made on your direct loans. Okay, they're going to look at all of that, okay, to hopefully, again, bring your payment count higher, so then at that point, you can have a higher payment count and then be closer to forgiveness for under the adjustment. Either receive forgiveness, right, or be close enough to, you may only have to make, say, hopefully another couple months worth, or maybe only a few years worth of payments remaining to then be done with the loans. So again, what does this mean? If you have multiple loans, it can happen for borrowers that you have an account with Nelnet, you had an account with Great Lakes, you had an account with Navient, these things, you have multiple loans with multiple servicers. And there are cases that the loans are on different forgiveness times. I mean, that very may well be the case, that your FFEL loans that you have, or say you have direct loans from, 2012, but your loans now, and you went back to school later, right? Those loans now are on a different timeline because you went to school at different times. And so you may still have a balance on one loan that is not yet forgiven. So think of, if you have FFEL loans and then you had direct loans, you're part of two loan programs, but they're on different timelines of forgiveness. So your FFEL loans might be forgiven first, but your direct loans aren't yet because they haven't reached the required time, okay? But if you do have your loans forgiven under the account adjustment, it's going to take a couple weeks, okay? Just because, systems got to talk to each other. The department's got to talk to your loan servicer. The department has to review your account in the first place. They got to do all that. Then they got to talk to the servicer. So it's going to take a little bit, but you should have hopefully gotten an email, gotten some sort of notification that it was happening for you. If not, I would encourage you to log into your account and call your loan servicer as well. So what does this mean for you as a borrower if you're like me, who is pursuing PSLF, or Public Service Loan Forgiveness? So if you're not aware, there is a program known as the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, or PSLF as it's known as, that the intention is to forgive your direct loans after you've made 120 qualifying payments, which is 10 years worth of payments, while you're on a qualifying repayment plan, which is an IDR, while working full-time for a qualifying employer. So there's a couple pieces there, but the goal is to have your loans forgiven after 10 years, okay? Now, the program was started all the way back in 2007, so any payment that you made after October 1 of 2007, as long as it met the requirements above, would be considered for PSLF, okay? So from here, though, this is just what a general overview of PSLF is. So if you're like me, and so I work for ISAC, I work for a state agency, okay? So if you are a person that works for a state agency, you are considered that you work for a state government. Okay, so you meet the qualifying employer. As long as you work full time, which is at least 30 hours, then that meets that requirement. You had to have made at least 10 years worth of payments. So I have not made 10 years worth of payments. But in that case, you have to also be repaying under either an income-driven repayment plan or the standard repayment plan. That's the key piece there. And then you have direct loans. So if you have these older federal student loans, you're not eligible for PSLF unless you consolidate them in. Okay. So you do have to complete an application process for PSLF to be enrolled in the program. You have to do an application every year. Think of it that way. You have to recertify every year. I mean, you can do this online through the PSLF help tool. And then the department will keep track, as well as your loan servicer will keep track of how many payments you've made towards the 120 payments that you need. But if you're already in the program like I am, what does this mean? So it meant that if you have been in the program for some time, is that the department automatically reviewed your account because one, you either already have direct loans, and you have certified, you've qualified for PSLF, you have payments that qualify. And so they did this in late 2023. They started reviewing those accounts. So if you haven't seen, maybe your payment count go up in a little while, maybe you have still like Mohila is the PSLF servicer, and say in the ineligible loan amount, there's still some ineligible payments there. You're like, why aren't these counting? I would absolutely recommend submitting another PSLF form to have those payments updated, but also to initiate the adjustment review. Even though it's going to happen automatically, I mean, it's going to take some time, but you could initiate it on your end for the department to say, okay, we want to get you reviewed. If at some point you do end up consolidating, okay, because you're required to, know that your payment count may temporarily reset to zero, okay? Don't freak out. It's okay. It's normal. But if they're trying to just bring everything back under one umbrella because the loan servicer is trying to pull from multiple areas. So with the PSLF, what's going to happen is that those are going to be adjusted through late 2024. So again, even though the department is at the tail end for a lot of this work, it's still going to be, if you initiate the review now and you have to consolidate, right? So say you have FFEL loans and you've been working in public service for 10 years, okay, or longer, you have to consolidate your loans, but then you also submit a PSLF application. At that point, because maybe you're like, I'm not sure I have 20 years worth of payments, but you know that at least you have 10, you could still receive forgiveness under PSLF, right? But so this is it's gonna take some time, but even if you're already in the PSLF program and you have those direct loans now, you could initiate the review by submitting another PSLF application. So what's going to happen? So say you don't reach forgiveness under PSLF with the payment count just update with the IDR plans. So what's going to happen is that once everything's happened, if you still are required to make payments, and you're still pursuing PSLF, okay, so you still have 2 years worth left, you have to meet the requirements of PSLF. But say you have an older federal student loan and you are going to apply for PSLF, all of the periods that the department counted for your IDR plans for your older loans will be credited towards PSLF if they're applicable. Okay, so again, to help really merge these programs, to say trying to lift these borrowers up to have their loans forgiven. Okay, the end goal, regardless, is to have the loans forgiven. So this slide is kind of lengthy, but what I'm going to tell you is that if you already had consolidated your loans at some point, okay, you don't, unless you have a FFEL consolidated loan or one of those other older consolidated loans, you do have to consolidate them again. But if you have a direct consolidated loan like I do, you don't have to reconsolidate them, okay, because they're all set. But what's going to happen is that for PSLF specifically, if you are in the program, is that they have a new rule about weighted adjustments. That's not going to happen because the department is in this adjustment review period. So they want to make sure that all payments that you've made, that if they fit the criteria of what I showed you earlier, that gets counted, right? They don't want to not have a payment count for you that can be. So they've kind of paused some rules under PSLF so that you can get the amount of payments that you're due to. But again, if you have those commercially fell loans or the Perkins, which they stopped serving those or stopped administering them in 2010, 2011, something like that. But then also those HEAL loans, you got to consolidate them. That is the main thing you all have to do if you have those types of loans, is you have to consolidate them. Now, there is one thing that you may also be aware of if you are a loan borrower, is if you have a joint consolidated loan. Now, I didn't know this was a thing until the department shared about it. So all the way back in the late 90s, the department said, okay, great. For loan borrowers who got married, you can have the ability to consolidate your loans together because you were married. And then Congress ended this practice back in 2006 and said, nope, we're not going to allow married couples to jointly bring their loans together. Okay. So what Congress did last year, though, was they established to say, we're going to allow for these either currently married couples or previously married couples to unconsolidate, to separate these joint consolidated loans. Meaning, whichever, each person, however much they brought into that joint consolidated piece, will now separate out and have only their loans attached to them. So what's going to happen? So if you are married and you have a joint consolidated loan, okay, and you both want to have the loan separated, you each have to submit an application for it to have the loan separated, okay? But if you are divorced from your spouse and you have a joint consolidated loan, and you don't have contact with that person or XYZ, the person who wants to separate out the loan, you can just submit the application. So that way only your portion gets, the loan is still separated, but you are only responsible for your portion that you brought into the loan. So if you do have questions about how to get started and stuff, the Federal Student Aid Ombudsman group has all of that. You certainly can email us as well, and we'll get you connected. But you want to notify your loan servicer as well that you intend to separate that loan as well. Okay, as we wrap up here, these are just some questions and the department has put together, as well as those answers. So this first question, right, do I have to consolidate? Yes, if you have commercially held FFEL loans or any Perkins or HEAL loans, okay, you have to. You have to, and you got to do that by April 30th of 2024. Okay, you have to do that within the next month. But if you are like me and have direct loans, you are not required to consolidate, but only those who have commercially held loans or the Perkins or the HEAL. What about a refund? How do I get one? How do I do that? So some borrowers, if you have direct loans like I do, and you've been making payments, for a long time, and the department finds that you have met the limit, you've met the 20 years required of you to make payments, and you've been making it on direct loans, okay, or a portion of them on direct loans. If there is an excess of payments made, you could potentially see them as refunded, okay? So that's just if there was an excess of payments. So in this case, since direct loans were only started going out in the 2010s, maybe a little bit before that. So you may have loans that you had FFEL and then you consolidated them in, or you have a FFEL loan plus a direct loan. What's going to happen is that direct loan, you may have been making payments towards that, but those FFEL loans, if you only have FFEL loans right now and you consolidate them to direct loans like you're required to, and you've been making payments, say, for 25 years and they find that, you're not going to get a refund, okay? That's not how it will work. It's only for direct loans that they'll receive an excess of payment for that. The other piece is that what if you've already received forgiveness on your loans through a different program, or you've paid off your loans and now you're hearing about this? You can't have them unforgiven. You can't receive a refund if the loans have already been forgiven, because they've been forgiven. There's nothing else to forgive and whatnot, or in the excess of payments, even if you say had ineligible payments, but then you eventually got to forgiveness. you can't receive a refund back of those payments. So just know that, again, if you consolidated at some point, the department's going to review your account totally. But if you had FFEL loans at some point or only had FFEL loans, and then you consolidated in the direct loan program, the refund's only going to come across those of you have had direct loans for, for almost the entire time. And if there was an excess of that, of those payments made. So what about taxes? So the federal government is not going to tax you if you do receive loan forgiveness up until January 1 of 2026. Illinois is not one of those states either. We pretty much follow federal tax law for some of our stuff, this being one of those things. So the federal government's not going to tax you, Illinois won't either. But you may not be from Illinois if you're joining us. Maybe you're from Indiana, wherever, okay? Other states don't do this. Other states will tax you. So the department should notify you, okay? If they plan on discharging or forgiving your loans, they mean similar things. Because of this account adjustment, right? You will have 30 days to say, no, I don't want to do this, because your state is going to tax you on it, then meaning that you have a higher amount of income that you brought in than you actually did. Okay, so that's what that means, is that if they do tax you, it will show that you have a higher adjusted gross income than you do. But Illinois won't do that. They're not going to tax you on it, but that's, again, you do have the choice to opt out. What if you do have a Parent Plus loan? Again, these will count towards this account adjustment as long as you've accumulated 25 years worth, okay? So whether they've been, the other piece is whether they've been consolidated or not, they will count. And so if you are a parent who has a Parent Plus loan and you don't reach forgiveness yet, say that's the case, you go through the adjustment and it still says you have, 2 years worth left of payments, okay? You are going to, because of how Parent Plus loans work, you are going to have to require to have them consolidated. Okay, that's the first piece. You got to do that by April 30th. But then you are going to also have to keep making payments under an income-driven repayment plan to have it forgiven. Okay, so that's the two caveats for Parent Plus loans, if and only if you don't reach say the 25 years, okay? But if you've reached the accumulated 25 years, then you're all good. You don't have to consolidate. But the bottom piece is if and only if that you don't reach the full term limit of the loan amount of the loan payments, then you got to do the two things at the bottom. You got to consolidate, and then you got to still making payments under an income-driven repayment plan. Okay, what about if my loans are in default? So during the payment pause, loans were paused, except that, again, those were commercially held. So you as a borrower do have benefits to have access to about either getting a part of the Fresh Start initiative. And so if this initiative is to help ramp you on back into repayment. And so if your loans were in default prior to the payment pause, the department wants to make sure you have the ability to get support in ramping back up into payments. And so it brings you back into what is called as good standing, okay? So that you can get access to other things like PSLF or other forbearance or deferment options so that you can get back on track. And you have until September 30th of this year to take advantage of that initiative. So again, there's the joint consolidated loans. I talked about this. What if for some reason you can't split them before the adjustment's done? The department's going to do it retroactively as long as you submit the application, okay? As long as you do that and the department reviews it, they will do it retroactively once the loan is separated out, okay? And so that way it can be confirmed for you and bring you hopefully closer to forgiveness. They'll do that retroactively. Okay, some resources. These are the current loan servicers. If you don't know who your loan servicer is, they're probably one of these, or they're going to be commercially held ones. Okay, so these are Department of Education loans. So there's Ed Financial, Mohila, who is the PSLF servicer, Aid Advantage, Nelnet, ECSI, and then the Default Resolution Group handles the Department of Education's defaulted loans. This is Mohila's website. This is just one version of what a student loan borrower's website would look like. This Mohilo is my loan servicer, and so this is what I would see when I would log in. They should have some sort of information for you, each of your loan servicers, about this a payment account adjustment. If not, feel free to call them, call the department so that it can get initiated for you. You can log into studentaid.gov, so they do have accounts that you can create. They're free on studentaid.gov so that you can see your entire loan history and see, okay, I think these were my servicers at one point, but I don't remember. And so you can see, who those are. If you want to learn about, okay, I have all these loans, I still am going to potentially have to make payments, but I want to see what my options are, or yes, I do want to pursue PSLF at some point, you can use the federal student loans, the loan simulator tool. And so this will help. You can, once you don't have to have an account, if you don't, you can manually input all your loans. But if you do have an account, what will happen is once you log in, they'll use the loans on file to then calculate what is your best repayment plan for you based on the information that you enter. So we do have an entire page dedicated to just this information that we talked about today. We do have other upcoming webinars in April through the end of April. And so if you have colleagues, friends, you're like, hey, I know you had, some of these older loan programs, please feel free to send them to a webinar, share this recording with them, or send our email, and we'll have that here in a second so that we can connect with them or connect with you to learn more about if you have questions on just your situation. You can, of course, submit a complaint to the department if you're like, hey, I've done these things, I have not heard anything, I think I absolutely deserve to have my payment counts updated, but nothing's happened. You can submit a complaint so that they're aware that, hey, there's been some sort of injustice done, but also I need to get the ball rolling. I don't believe my payments were accurately counted. I want another review done to see to bring me closer to forgiveness. Just in case though, beware of scammers. I know that they're kind of tricky nowadays. They're very tech savvy, those things, but ISAC is never going to call you. Okay. Kind of it's like, the IRS will never call you. ISAC will not call you, I swear. But just be mindful of scammers and whatnot, and those things. So always call your loan servicer kind of thing. And all of the services that we provide here at the state are free, so you should never have to pay for anything, but just be mindful of scammers. All right, thank you so much. I know I'm just a minute over time here. The evaluation is, we do have an evaluation that we ask if you would like to take. That's in the chat, located at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. This is our email. If you have questions about this or okay, I'm ready to get started, or can I meet with you, you can send us a message at isac.borrowersupport at illinois.gov, and we will gladly help you out. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.